Greetings, comrades. Hello. If you're listening to this live, it means that I am currently on vacation. I have pre recorded this episode with a good comrade of mine, Comrade Ivanna from the Pacific Northwest region of the American Party of Labor. Today, we're going to be talking about the genocide of the Palestinians and the modern Holocaust, which is happening right now in front of our eyes. Before we get started, it's the top of the hour disclaimer, as always. WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign online community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU UCIMC. Okay, comrades, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to switch over to the discussion that we had. If you're listening to this live, it's going to only be part of the discussion as it goes over the hour in which we are allotted for every Wednesday night. So if you're interested in listening to the rest, please go ahead, go on down to my YouTube channel, where the episode will be uploaded the same day as the episode is aired live, and you can listen to the whole thing there. So, without further ado, the genocide of the Palestinians has, at the time of recording, been happening for approximately 676 days, while we have all watched in disgust and horror as the Israeli occupying force murdered and maimed innocent men, women, and children. Countless videos and photos have been coming out of the Gaza Strip of dead children and adults alike, killed either directly by a soldier, falling rubble, or injuries sustained in attacks by the IOF. In this episode, Comrade Ivanna of the American Party of Labor and I discuss the apartheid, the historical context of how we got here, and the genocide. As we discuss, please take breaks as needed, as this is an extremely heavy topic, and please donate and share the different GoFundMes and fundraisers, boycott as many businesses as you can on the BDS list, and speak out for Palestinian lives. Thank you, comrades, and enjoy the show. Okay, so thank you so much for joining in on this conversation today. I'm super excited to really, discuss and kind of analyze a lot of what we're about Palestine and like what's going on, especially through a much more progressive and like leftist view, because I feel like a lot of what's been like talked about has been through the lens of like liberalism. And it's really important, I think, to also kind of expand horizons a little bit and see like, okay, like how would leftists view this? Especially when we're trying to educate people about colonialism and imperialism and everything. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So would you like to introduce yourself or
To everybody, hi, my name is Ivanna. I am with the American Party of Labor, and I am based in Seattle with the John Reed Division.
lovely? And when did you join American Party of Labor?
So I joined the APL in 2023, just a little bit after October, I think. It's been a long time and a lot's happened, so I
Yeah,
forget. Yeah,
a
in
lot has
2023, I
happened.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, okay. So definitely getting into like, I would like to start off this conversation with some historical context. We don't have to go a ton into it because there's many other people with much more information and like knowledge on the subject of like the intense colonial project that has been going on. But the broad strokes, so people kind of understand the context for which we are discussing this. I kind of want to talk about like I would say the period before, like a little bit before the state of Israel was like established, and then when they were established, because of the immense amount of violence that I think ensued in order for Israel to begin existing, and also like the fact that Palestinians have been here for a while. They didn't. I feel like there's this like weird notion that Palestinians just popped up out of nowhere and just started like a lot of liberals see this as like, oh, the Palestinians, they just won't leave the Jews alone, and it's like that's not actually true. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
Well, as far as a historical buildup goes, I suppose um, we can start right at the beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
So at the very, very tail end of the 19th century, you had the Zionist movement starting to have their conferences, congresses, etc., like in I think Basel and stuff, like
Hmm.
Sweden and some other places around Europe and stuff like that. And that's where the name Herzl comes from, and some of the first few versions of Zionism come from. And then in the beginning um, of the 20th century, Palestine was an Ottoman territory. And we know that subsequently, a couple years later, after World War One, the Ottoman Empire was divided and split up among various holdings by other foreign powers, and pretty much no sovereignty was given out to anybody.
Mm.
But kind of in a back room, very, very, very quiet treaty between the French and British government, the East Mediterranean or the Levant, or whatever you want to call the region, was kind of like quietly and secretly divided using the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And that's where Palestine became the British Mandate of Palestine or Mandatory Palestine, and like Syria and Lebanon went under the purview of France, and Iraq also became a British mandate for some time. So that is the beginning of the 20th century, and should show you a little bit of you know Palestine did exist before
Hmm.
1948. Palestinians did exist before 1948, and the
Hmm.
various ethnic tribes and groups that occupy the Levant will also like back up this history with their like oral history and some written history as well. That Palestine and Palestinians existed long, long into history. Same with like the Lebanese people and various other tribes, Bedouins, etc., that sort of thing. So these people existed before Israel. They did not spring up out of nowhere after the
Yeah.
creation of Israel. And that kind of sets this Sykes-Picot Agreement, these backdoor treaties between the French and the British, kind of set a huge, huge set of arbitrary boundaries, et cetera, that don't represent the people groups there. And subsequently, we've seen many conflicts over the years that have resulted just from this one backdoor agreement.
Yeah, and it's really telling how the French and the British handled this. And really, whenever they got their claws on anything, it turned into a complete mess because a lot of the time, like they want control over these regions for the immense amount of like natural resources which they have. And like what I think is the most interesting about all of this is the fact that the French and the British like were totally fine with telling the Palestinians, "Oh yeah, you'll have like you'll be fine. Like you're nothing's gonna happen to you." And then they turn around and were like, "Yeah, you can have Palestine," to like the Zionists and everything, and we're like, "You can have it. They're not gonna care." Kind of like really like once again not taking any like not caring at all about the indigenous population that has lived there and instead being totally fine with, okay, well, as long as we have a presence in the region and we can control whatever resource exists there for our own colonial and like imperialist interest is fine. um and so kind of like moving into like 1947 to like 1949 post World War II, we're getting, this is like a lot has happened since, the Balfour Declaration and like the like I would say like pre and post World War One, like we're now at the point where Israel is established. And something that like I found a timeline for some historical context on the Al Jazeera remix, where they talk about they talk about Palestine and everything that like the timeline of events that was going on. And they basically like the UN was completely fine with this, like the United Nations, like everyone was fine with it, but of course, indigenous voices are not being heard. And like this is one of like the big problems with imperialism is like the people who are actually living there who actually are having to endure this, they're not actually being considered or like talked to about what's going on their own land. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So so with that, I mean there are a lot of interesting um, kind of contradictions there that occurred over the years. So from the onset of the like uh, original Zionist movement, there were like European Jewish settlers buying up land from like a like kind of comprador bourgeoisie in Palestine and stuff. And starting the very, very early kibbutzim, which are the like farming settlements just outside of the Gaza Strip, ironically now. And a lot of these like land grabs where the bourgeoisie of Palestine were, just selling off land and not really caring about the connotations for this big settler colonial project
Hmm.
that was just starting to grow and grow and grow. And then obviously like the complete travesty of World War II happened, and a lot of like the Jewish population of Europe did flee and stuff like that. Like it's very, very complicated what led up to the UN decision. And obviously, of course, as you said, the Palestinians, as a British mandate, didn't have a voice at this United Nations referendum to divide Palestine. There was no Palestinian representation, basically at all, except for maybe a few people. But it was just under this, imperial purview of England, and therefore there were no voices there, no representation. So, of course, the people who will be affected will never be represented by something like that.
Yeah. And it's like you can't expect like the people living there to not, be angry or to like be like, hey, why are we being kicked off of our land? Like, why are we being like I feel like when we talk about the like the displacement that was going on, and the fact is that like this was being done in the name of Judaism, but there were many Jewish people who were coming over to settle in Israel who were seeing that this was happening and being like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, I didn't sign up to like be given a home, but like that home was just immediately like the family was just like removed. Like I've heard, like I've been reading up briefly on like what accounts were coming out of that region at the time, and there were like plenty of Jewish people who were looking at the situation and being like, I did not sign up for this. And I think it's telling about the fact that ultra Zionists and nationalists will try to use the word like use Judaism as a way to be like, we are justified in this, but like not all Jewish people feel the same way about this situation. And like even going back to the time when Israel was founded, Jewish people were still like there were still Jewish people who were like, yeah, I don't think I'm down with this. I didn't realize that this was the project. Like this is not my project. This was obviously for other reasons because this is not what I signed up for. Like
Yeah, yeah,
um
exactly. The mask started to be torn off of this project and its backing from, world imperialist powers quite quickly, where people were, oh, like we could just go settle there. Like it's kind of like the historic, like it's the land of the tales that's in the Bible and in the old scriptures and that kind of stuff. And then they get there and they see the ethnic clashes and the home stealing and land grabs and all of these other horrible things happening to the like indigenous population of Palestine. And all that goes to say too, like it wasn't that Jewish people never existed in Palestine either. There were Jews who
yeah.
lived there, indigenous Jewish people, indigenous Palestinians, if you will, that lived there at the time as well. These were distinctly a European settler project to take over a portion of land in a region of the world that had, um, we can say, various reasons for it wanting to be put under the control of the European imperialist powers.
Yeah. And, it's really, I think that it's important to understand that, like, um, this was specifically a European project. Like, there were Palestinian Jews who lived in the area at the time prior to a colonial project even starting, and they identified as Palestinian.
Mhm.
My partner and I were actually recently, we were on a drive to go see family, and we were reading the 100 Years War on Palestine, the book by, I believe he's a Columbia professor. And he talked about this, like the fact that there were Jewish people who did live in the area and they were indigenous to the land. They just weren't European. They they identified as Palestinian. Like there was no question, and there were Christians that lived on the land as well. It was never like it's not as if this region was like devoid of any other groups. It's just the fact that they weren't European. And I think that it's really interesting that what's going on right now, specifically in some of Israel's earliest founders, especially those who were there during the night between the years of 1947 and 1949, specifically wanted to populate the area with Ashkenazi Jews. And they did not like specifically brown people being there. That's what it was
hmm
about.
hmm
Like,
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you can still even read reports today about ethnic tensions between Ashkenazim and Mizrahim within the occupation too, and various other ethnic groups that have had issues even being accepted into Israel. Like Ethiopian Jews have had a history of being denied entry into Israel as well. So yeah, it is very, very, very obviously a European settler project, um, and stuff. And there is a lot of the usage of like these ethno-religious um, justifications for it, but also on like the political left, especially in the realm of Marxism, like we start to look at these things in another lens. What is the economic force behind it? Because
mm-hmm.
Marxists and leftists broadly should hold that the driving force behind just society as a whole is the economic forces, the means of production, like the quote
Mm-hmm.
that I am spacing now. But so we can look at these ethnic and ethno-religious justifications for the land, but also we should kind of start to look at what so much money was pumped into moving all of the settlers into the occupation, doing the land grabs, um, changing the borders, all this stuff. Why do that if you're not going to get anything out of it?
Mm-hmm.
So there are other reasons too. There's obviously the region generally is very, very rich with oil and natural gas and that sort of
Yep.
things. Having the international waters, having the Suez Canal, which there were two conflicts fought over that in the 20th century as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of different factors contributing to what's going on and why this genocide specifically of the Gaza Strip is going on today.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also look at like the broader region and the fact that the United States and colonial projects have been, or just imperial, I should say more imperialist projects, have had a vested interest in destabilizing the region. And they have, sorry, my phone keeps going off. I'm like, hello. Let me just put this on do not disturb. Oh, geez, I'm getting so many notifications at once. Um, so like what I was saying is like oh, I forgot what I was saying now. Darn it. Okay.
The vested interest in
Yeah.
destabilizing the region, yeah.
They have a very vested interest. Like if we look at the Iran crisis and everything that was going on in Iran in the 70s, it was particularly because the United States and Britain did not want to lose their hold over Iranian oil and like the influence that they had over Iranian oil. And
hmm
that Iran had specifically had a democratically elected a guy who wasn't really even a socialist. He just wanted to nationalize Iranian oil and they didn't like that. So they specifically destabilized the area and put in a right wing dictator, the Shah, to control the region so that they could have access to Iranian oil. Like this is not it. It is a similar principle where having a presence in the region, specifically with Israel, as like a Western proxy state, basically existing there
hmm
as a way for the West to have influence in the area, like is a very big part as to why they also want to keep it European. Like they don't
hmm
want to have if people in the region had autonomy and had the right to self-determination, there's no guarantee that they would even want to do business with imperialist powers because of how much harm has been doled out by imperialist powers against indigenous people. And so it's kind of like this like self-fulfilling prophecy where colonial powers do harm against indigenous people. And we're now in like a more modern era in which supposedly that doesn't happen. Of course, it is happening right now, of course, to the Palestinians, which is who we're talking about. But the fact is that America likes to be this whole, we're the leader of the free world. We just care so much. And it's like, if you cared so much, then why did you fund so many right wing coups? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Why did you install Pinochet
Yep.
instead of the democratically popularly elected Allende? Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous propaganda campaign that they've been doing for years now.
And
Um,
it's also how they've allowed apartheid states like the one in South Africa to exist and the one in Palestine that has existed for not centuries, for decades,
mhm.
since they completely took over Israel and started colonizing it. And that's kind of getting into like, I want to pose a definition of apartheid and see if it's applicable to what we as Marxists, like how we like our principles and everything. And what I wrote down is, apartheid is a legal system of segregation and discrimination on the basis of race and or ethnicity. Would you say I'm missing anything, or like how would you talk about apartheid?
Um, yeah, I think that's a pretty concise definition of apartheid. We can we can have short definitions like that, and still also recognize that the tactic and implementation may be different from place to place.
Right.
Um, so South Africa, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was like voting rights and property rights and stuff like that. Um, in the Israel-Palestine situation, the implementation is mainly um, like a civil law ruling over the territory controlled by Israel, and then a military law system controlled over the West Bank, and then of course the just kind of isolated open air prison that is the Gaza Strip was at one point under the same political party as the West Bank, but now, like since 2007, has been under Hamas's political control. But these two different sets of laws that apply to two different sets of people groups fits within that definition of apartheid.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that when we look at apartheid, when I think about it, I also think about like access to resources. And when I hear people talking about, oh, well, if we just do a two-state solution, then it'll all be fixed and it'll all be normal and there can be peace in the region. And like, so kind of when I
Yeah.
you you take this one first. You take this one first.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So two-state solution. Let's talk about why that's a pipe dream. So let's look at some other historical contexts
There
of
we go.
uh, neighboring states that are opposed ideologically or for whatever reason they're opposed, right? How about the recent clashes between India and Pakistan
Mm-hmm.
um, over the Kashmir region, Jammu and Kashmir, where you have two nuclear armed states who hate each other, ultra nationalist nuclear armed states that hate each other. If you set two different sovereign states that are right next to each other, not only right next to each other, but that like share internal borders that like bisect land and have this division, um, that's only going to result in further conflict, right? Um, even Iran and Iraq, with their differences over the years, they clashed in the Iran-Iraq War, and there's still militia clashes over the border between the two countries today.
Yeah.
Um, Kurdistan is a country that's divided between Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran, and there are constant clashes, both from the dominant nations, being the four that I listed in those situations, as well as the Kurdish groups, like clashing with the dominant nations themselves. So, a two-state solution is something that's not possible if you want arms to be laid down for a moment. Because if you create sovereignty, all that's going to happen is Israel's just going to declare war on the state of Palestine, and now it has some type of legitimacy because it's a war and not attacks into an occupied territory, um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going to get worse. a two-state solution is a pipe dream.
It's also assuming that nationalism is somehow going to fix these problems as if it hasn't caused them to begin with. The fact is that Zionism, ultranationalism, is what caused this to begin with. The region, well, I'm sure it wasn't completely peaceful and safe and everyone was happy all the time. Um, like Jews and Arabs and Muslims and Christians and all kinds of people who were living there were living together. And we can see how ultranationalism has not actually created solutions for these problems, but only wrought more problems out of them. And also the
Mhm.
fact is that even if we somehow were able to do a two-state solution, and it certainly wouldn't be possible after the genocide currently happening right now, Israel still has full control over the resources that are allowed into the Gaza Strip and into the West Bank. Like they wouldn't even be able to have self-determination if it was quote unquote given to them. There's still that material self-determination wouldn't exist for Palestinians.
Yeah, and other things too, like the a two-state solution today, like the overwhelming like military and naval strength of the Israeli regime, would be able to exert force over, and they already do exert like naval force and blockades over the internationally recognized sovereign waters of Gaza. Like, how is the Gaza Strip? How is Palestine supposed to utilize their economic exclusionary zones in those international waters, which are, I believe, 20 or 100 kilometers or some, there's a certain way to quantify those borders into the water. But they have nothing, especially in the Gaza Strip. There is nothing. They have rocks at this point and people.
It's been
That's it.
decimated.
It's been decimated. And so a two-state solution to like is just it's unfeasible. It's
It's
unfeasible. It won't work. It'll lead to further conflicts, and then the state of Palestine will just get economically swallowed by the state of Israel.
Yeah, and like kind of like since we've mentioned the genocide now and kind of done a little bit of background on the discussion around like how this apartheid state even happened, what an apartheid state is, and like how this two-state solution just cannot be feasible. On the genocide itself, I kind of want to make this, I don't even know if it's like an announcement, but I feel like there's this like precursor that people feel the need to do of there's a rise of anti-Semitism and we need to stop anti-Semitism and then we can talk about the genocide. And it's like, okay, I can accept that yes, anti-Semitism is happening, but it is overwhelmingly coming from the right wing. Overwhelmingly. Um, it is
Yeah,
not
Nick
that anti
Fuentes,
Nick
Alex Jones.
Fuentes, Alex, thank you. I'm just
Yeah, those
tired.
are the figures driving anti-Semitism. It's not the left. It's not the
Leftists,
left at all.
yeah. Here's the thing. If someone is being anti-Semitic and they are calling themselves a leftist, there's a really good chance that they're probably not a leftist. So and there's a very good chance that they're calling themselves a leftist in bad faith to make the left look bad because most, if not all leftists are completely and totally against anti-Semitism. That is baked into the ideology of being a Marxist-Leninist. Like
Mhm. Yeah,
it
absolutely.
is,
Yeah, discrimination has zero place in Marxism-Leninism because discrimination based on arbitrary like people groupings, etc., these kinds of things, like there is, aside from cultural connotations that people from different cultures are different, and that's fine. There's no reason to discriminate. There's no benefit to society. It doesn't move society forward to discriminate against people based on one thing or another. In fact, it moves society further and further backwards the more it goes on. It's
mhm,
antithetical to Marxism. Anybody on the left will not be anti-Semitic, and if they are being anti-Semitic in a deliberate way, then yeah, they're not a leftist. Simple.
they're not a
So,
leftist.
and I don't think
And
the precursor for saying they're not a leftist, yeah, and I don't think the precursor or making the acknowledgement of anti-Semitism when talking about Palestine or when talking about the genocide is really that needed either. Because as you said, it's coming from the right. It's coming from figures, manosphere figures like Nick Fuentes, Andrew Tate, Alex Jones. These types are the ones
mhm.
driving anti-Semitism in society. They're the ones with all the conspiracy theories about the Jews this and the Jews that and that kind of stuff. Like we as leftists, especially Marxist-Leninists, like can can and do draw a line between Zionism and Judaism and Jewish people. Zionism is a like imperialist project that utilizes ultranationalism and ethno-nationalism as a tactic to take over a region. The Jewish people as a whole, nothing in their religion that talks about that. The books are out there for you to go read. Nowhere in any of Jewish scriptures does it say go colonize another place. No, it doesn't. It doesn't say that anywhere. So
Mhm.
the making this like acknowledgement of anti-Semitism is pointless unless you're being accused of it or something like that to do the defense. We can talk about genocide without talking about this stuff, and it's also right wing propaganda. It's definitely fueled by the Israeli regime. Israelism, as the
Mhm.
Al Jazeera documentary put it, is a big issue, and they're manufacturing the ability to the consent to be able to keep doing this to the Palestinian people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that, you know what, like what we really need to be talking about, honestly, is not only the genocide, but the amount of Islamophobia. I'm tired. I'm so over it with people not talking about the Islam, like the rampant Islamophobia that has existed for decades at this point,
Mhm.
not only within our governing bodies, but also within a collective American conscious as well. Like the fact is that like there is like so much Islamophobia that is happening. Like I've experienced it with my own family, having to talk to them about like the fact that saying like calling someone quote unquote a radical Muslim is racist and you shouldn't say that. But that has
Yeah,
become
it's super
completely
racist. Yeah.
normalized. It's become completely, the fact is that like the fact that people are able to go on quote unquote liberal news outlets and just say blatantly racist Islamophobic things, if they replaced what they were saying, if they replaced the words Muslim with the word Jew, they would be immediately deplatformed, as they should, because
Hmm.
it is disgusting language. But the fact that
Yeah.
they are saying it about Muslim people, they are saying it about Arab people, means that it is socially acceptable because not enough people are calling it out, and we need to be calling it out. There is like when Zoran Mamdani won the primary in New York,
Oh
the
God,
amount of people, oh my god, liberals,
it's
people
so
who would
bad.
call them, it was bad. It was so bad. People
Yeah,
started going insane.
disgusting libels against him, like um, saying the craziest things. Because yeah, so if anyone who isn't aware that's listening, Zoran Mamdani comes from an Indian Muslim family that immigrated to Uganda and then came to the U.S. Um, and yeah, just the crazy allegations against him that he's like an Islamist or that he is a Hamas
Mhm.
operative and stuff. It's like, have you ever looked at a world map? But like this precedent of allowable Islamophobia in America, especially, but generally in the West, but in America especially, I think comes from two sources. One, there was a deliberate pivot to the Middle East um, during the Cold War. So
Mhm.
that started with the U.S. and the Soviet Union backing different sides of the conflict in Afghanistan,
Mhm.
and then coming out of the Cold War, and then Egypt as well in 1956 with the Suez Crisis, and so these kinds of things in this Middle East, Mediterranean, especially region, coming out of it. Then we had Operation Desert Storm,
Mhm.
where the U.S. was so opposed to what was going on in Iraq and Kuwait, etc., and we, as in the U.S., killed many, many people. And then,
Literally millions.
after the attacks, yeah, literally millions. And then after 9/11, um,
There it
their
is.
9/11 was utilized by, let's see. So Osama bin Laden was a Saudi who lived in Afghanistan, and 9/11 happens. And our first reaction to that is to invade Iraq. Like, what does Iraq have
America.
anything? What does Iraq have anything to do with a Saudi that was living in Afghanistan that was chased across Afghanistan and into Pakistan and stuff for years until they finally killed him. What does Iraq have anything to do with it?
Nothing.
Economic driving factors. And
Yeah.
we've brushed on this a little bit. So obviously the region we all know is very, very rich in oil deposits. There are also various mineral deposits, natural gas as well, which is kind of the same industry as oil, but there are certain like other things about natural gas that are attractive. You can create more than just fuel with natural gas, and same with oil, but there's a lot of possibilities with natural gas. So there are economic factors driving all these eyes onto the region. And so we go into Iraq. We depose Saddam Hussein, who was, nationalizing industries and trying, there obviously were problems with his regime, but he was trying to keep Iraq's resources within Iraq's hands. And
Hmm.
America's like, not on my watch. And they
America's like,
overthrew,
I don't like that.
yeah, don't like that. They overthrew the leader. They installed a comprador regime in Iraq, and has since done the same in various other places as well. Towards the end of the Arabian Peninsula, the Saudis are very, very closely tied to the U.S. regime at this point as well.
Hmm.
It's yeah, but to get the conscripted soldier in America to get behind this, to go to this far off land with people that he's probably never met in his life at this point, um, and kill them, kill millions of them, kill
Hmm.
children, kick down the doors of homes, and go father, mother, child, 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 wipe out entire households to get these young men who are tricked into this system, unfortunately, to storm Fallujah for 12 days, and all these
Hmm.
other horrible things that happen over the Middle East conflict. You have to manufacture a certain
A narrative.
a narrative around it, right? So
Hmm.
it's just the Arabs that are evil. It's the Arabs that are the problem. It's the Muslims. This is Islamic extremism that did 9/11, and it's not that we destroyed the region in 92 or
We
anything that
didn't
led to that.
do anything. This wasn't our
We didn't do
fault.
anything wrong. Yeah,
This
exactly.
is
It's not
not
that
my
America
fault.
destroyed the region in the 90s or anything like that that might have led to somebody wanting to strike back.
Hmm.
But the the imperialist bourgeoisie of the United States recognized that they had to not only like physically get the American people to sign up and get behind this campaign, but mentally get behind this campaign as well. Um, and obviously, the war industry and the military industrial complex never slowed down from the Cold War. But to get the masses using, nationalism, um, national pride, etc., these sorts of things following 9/11, um, to get young conscripted manipulated men to go kill for
Hmm.
economic interests in the Middle East. There's a certain tactic, and that was Islamophobia. And we as a nation have never recovered from that at all. And so much else of things American culture has never recovered from the fallout of 9/11 either. I mean, so much music, the way radio was done was changes that was changed. Taking a plane somewhere is completely different as well. But Islamophobia, some of the extremely ugly parts of this campaign to mentally consent to destroying a region of the world uh, still exists today. And Islamophobia is probably one of the most permissible types of bigotry in America. Still,
It
it's horrible.
is. And I think that it's part of the reason why Americans for almost 2 years now are have been essentially turning a blind eye to the genocide and are being like we're totally fine with it for months and months and months, and we're willing to accept the narrative that well we're just trying to protect Jews, we're just trying to we just want to protect Jews from the scary Muslims because that's been the narrative for years at this point. Your enemies, we decide who your enemies are. Trust me, we know all the things, we know all the intelligence. Just trust us. These are the guys that look what they did on 9/11. Look what they did on like blah 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 day or whatever. Look at these all of these terrible events, very conveniently leaving out all of the atrocities of which the American empire has partaken in and led um against against not just Arab people and Muslims and but people, indigenous people and cultures across the world. There's like a litany of governments that we have overthrown in South America in order to preserve our imperialist interests down there. Like it's no different. It's just the fact that it's, as you said, the use of Islamophobia to convince people that this is okay. But it's really hard, I think, to convince people. It's easy to convince people 20 years ago when you could very easily manufacture consent with news outlets and media that is owned by billionaires, by the bourgeois class, that is perfectly fine with lying to people about this. But when it's live streamed, as we can see, 20 and 25 years later, while this genocide is happening, it's the first genocide that has been live streamed, that you can log in on
Yeah.
your phone anytime, any day, and look at a picture of a child starving to death. That's a different feeling.
Hmm.
And I think Americans are starting to wake up to the fact that more often than not, in fact, probably 100% of the time, America has been the perpetrator of immense violence. And we've been lied to or just completely turned a blind eye because, well, it doesn't affect me. It's fine. It doesn't
Hmm.
affect me. Why should I care? But as we can see, it's really hard to look away after almost 2 years of kids getting murdered. It's really hard when that stuff is like being blasted in your face, especially I think for a lot of young people on Instagram and Facebook. And well, I don't know how a lot of young people are on Facebook, but like, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I know, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think even some people that I consider to be the most apolitical, the embodiment of liberal in America will come up to me and start asking me questions about these things like, hey, what really is going on in Palestine? Because as a Marxist-Leninist, as an organizer, as an activist, you kind of carry the in the know
Yeah,
thing
the
around with
little
you, and
sign.
people, yeah, like I know a little bit. You can ask me a couple of questions, yeah. But
Yeah.
even people who I never expected to care ask me like, what is going on in Palestine? And it's like, how long of a conversation do you want to have?
Well,
You know,
yeah,
like they're like, is America really the bad guy? It's like, yeah, yeah. Like
yeah.
we are the bad guy. Have you ever talked to somebody from outside of America? And the answer is always no, too, of course.
Mhm.
Um, and even if they've traveled to, parts of Europe or maybe some certain European countries, there's like kind of like the more popular mood about Americans, being like the police of the world, and maybe like, oh, some other countries would kind of be like, oh yeah, America is the real terrorist. Like, but kind of like joking, like that it's kind of a similarity in culture about joking about the crimes of our own nation. But
Hmm. But not
everywhere
actually
else in the
confronting
world,
those crimes.
yeah, everywhere else in the world looks at the United States as the biggest terrorist. We are the biggest terrorist, and the rest of the world recognizes that.
We are the
Absolutely.
occupier.
We are
Like
the occupier
that's
with
the
the
big thing here.
bloodshedders. Mhm.
Like it's, we can blame the right-wing Israeli government all we want, which is part of like I took up that narrative as well when I started learning more, because I was in the same boat as a lot of other people when the conflict, or sorry, the genocide started, where like I was also very conditioned into being like, well, I was definitely against the genocide, but I was very conditioned into being like, it's only the right-wing Israeli government. No one in Israel feels good about this. No one in Israel wants this to be happening. And that's a big problem, because the fact is that a lot of people in Israel actually are fine with this. And because they are nationalists, because this is an ultra nationalist country, it is the same aesthetics. It is the same like fascist hardware that was used in Nazi Germany, just repurposed because it's fascism.
Mhm.
Fascism doesn't discriminate against who is going to do the fascism.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think
One thing
there's,
there.
oh yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
so yeah, like the it's horrible to say this, but like we do want to be super, super correct here. But the Israel itself is not a fascist state yet. It doesn't meet all those characteristics yet,
I
but it is
see.
an
Okay.
extremely reactionary, bourgeois ultranationalist state that is incredibly violent. It lacks some of
Absolutely.
the economic and governmental structures that a fascist state
No,
does,
yeah,
because there
that's
are some
definitely true.
little tiny, we all see through the veil of bourgeois democracy, but
Mhm.
bourgeois democracy does in some capacities exist in Israel, and for that reason Israel is not a fascist state. But when we're talking about capitalist states being violent and reactionary, we say, oh, they're not fascists, dot dot dot, yet. Same with
Yes.
America. The same with it all just depends on when the crisis gets to them enough that they want to turn it in onto their own people and their own working classes. That's the only difference. But yes, for all
Exactly.
other reasons, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the like when we talk about, the genocide, I'd like to talk about some statistics really fast that I pulled up, just to kind of talk about also how this is. I think the statistics on the death count and everything have been extremely lowballed. Like they aren't even
Oh
really
yeah.
in the ballpark of how many people have died because of the fact that Israel has completely destroyed any kind of health system. Like the Gaza Health Ministry does exist, and they are like saying, like they're saying, from what I'm seeing, around 61,709 people have been killed, 17,492 of those being children. But we can see from the destruction and also from the fact of how broken down these health systems are because of the insane bombings that have been going on for over almost 2 years now, that number is extremely lowballed. That other numbers have come out that it's closer to 150,000. And I've been really like inundated in a lot of like pro-Palestinian like spaces for a while now. And a lot of people that like not a lot people that I've listened to have been saying that like when the actual numbers come out, it is going to be a like I don't think people really realize the amount of people that have died in this conflict, in this genocide.
We're gonna see from what I think is going on based on some other historical like um context around how casualties are counted, and the ability for the Gaza Health Ministry to count casualties. I think we're going to see the remaining Gaza population be somewhere in the middle between 1 and 2 million. And prior to this genocide, this era, this epoch of the offensive of the genocide of Palestinian people, the population of the Gaza Strip was 2.3 million people. Now, I want to put that in a little bit of context, for
Mm-hmm.
the people listening. Um, so let's look up some dimensions of the Gaza Strip really quickly,
Ah,
and then
yes.
we'll this is so let's go square footage and size of the Gaza Strip. So let's look at
Yes.
this. This will be AI, of course, but we're gonna use that. So the narrow strip of land is approximately 25 miles long. So think about how quickly you can drive 25 miles on the highway. That's
Yeah.
25 minutes with no traffic, right? And then from 3.7 to 7.5 miles wide, and that housed 2.3 million people. So this is an example I use. Um, Size and square footage of Seattle is something I use to explain some things to people. So do. So land area do. See, I know that basically what I'm getting at
Mm-hmm.
is if you took Palestine off the map, you set it over Seattle, Palestine fits within Seattle.
Crazy.
Um, so and we can do the math too. So there, Seattle has a total area of 142.5 square miles. The Gaza Strip has a total area of 139 square miles. So they're about the same size.
Mm-hmm.
2.3 million people in the Gaza Strip.
That's a
Seattle
lot of people.
population 780,995. So, and then let's just go look at any image of the Gaza Strip. People, we've all seen enough. We can kind of imagine. If you think that that population density is living and
Mhm.
surviving in that environment, you are delusional. Like,
Yeah.
uh, there's no way that only 61,000 people have died. I mean, we even saw that estimated figure come out back towards the end of or middle end of 2024. That was something like, 150,000 when the official Gaza Health Ministry count was 35,000 or
Hmm.
40,000. Um, and there are other connotations around casualty counts where an official casualty count can actually only represent anywhere from, you know, a quarter to a 15th of the actual casualty count in war because of how all the bodies that get lost or just vaporized, burned to a crisp, especially with the stuff going on in the Gaza Strip, burned to nothing, ashes. There are people who can't be counted. Um, so for that reason, I think we're going to see a figure between 1 and 2 million left in the Gaza
And
Strip.
it's incredibly sad, and it's also I think it's very telling that people were willing to accept this number so quickly. But now it's being contested like heavily, especially because when you see the photos of the famine that are coming out, which most recently what's been going on, for those who are not in the loop about the current conditions of those living through the genocide, it's not good, to say the least. Like
Yeah,
it
they're in
is
acute famine, starvation.
that, yes, they are in the level of famine and starvation where people are just dropping like flies. It's not even a question, that people there is a policy of famine that is going on. And for people who are like, well, Benjamin Netanyahu said that there isn't. So Benjamin Netanyahu lies, as does the Israeli
Yeah,
government. They just
they have a
lie.
vested interest in lying. Yeah, they have a vested interest in lying about this.
Bourgeois governments and bourgeois democracies have been doing this to us for years. Our own government does it to us. Our own government lied about winning the Vietnam War. Our own government lied about what was going on in Iraq. Like we we cannot accept, especially liberal news media that is owned by billionaires. I'm actually going to be doing an episode on this in a few weeks, talking about Larry Fink and the fact that some of the biggest investment firms in the world own significant portions and significant shares of media outlets. They can just if they don't like a narrative that's coming out, they can just change it. It's
Hmm.
like this is the type of movie super villain stuff that you see happening, but it's actually in real life. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fact is that the famine that's going on, the immense amount of casualties that are happening, and the manufactured consent around it can be summed up to, this is Islamophobia. This is what happens when we allow nationalist far right regimes to take power. They have to find a bad guy, because the bad guy can't be the bourgeois class. It has to be someone else. There has to be a scapegoat. This is exactly what happened to Jewish people in the 1930s in Germany. It's just happening now to Arab people and to Muslims and to Palestinians living that happen to live in this area when the Zionist project started. Um, it's it's terrible. It's there's not even words that I can even come up with at this point to describe what's going on, because you look at images that are coming out, like just this last weekend. Actually, I wanted to touch on this before we go. The fact is, a crew of 5 Al Jazeera journalists were murdered by the state of Israel.
Yeah, Anas Al Sharif. God, I'm spacing on the other names, but I've been watching Anas Al Sharif for the entirety of this conflict. I think I even watched them a little bit before this
Hmm.
was going on too, before
Yeah.
October 7th. And
And
yeah, I mean, according to Al Jazeera today, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli regime uh, openly confirmed that they deliberately assassinated this team of Al Jazeera reporters in the Gaza Strip.
they keep saying, oh, it was because they were working with Hamas. We have no evidence to prove that. And if they even if they
Yeah, they
did
didn't
have,
say anything to Hamas.
there's they will say that anything is Hamas. And to listeners who may think, oh well, they just want to get rid of Hamas. They're just trying to get rid of Hamas, and then they just want to leave the Gaza Strip for the Palestinians. Actually, no, they don't, because it has come out in recent days that they are planning on taking over the entire thing. They want to take everything over and basically forcibly displace everyone that lives there. And as we know from past genocides which have happened and occurred, this is impossible. It is completely impossible to be able to forcibly displace millions upon millions of people like that. And we saw this happen in Germany, and we saw what happened after that. I urge people truly to look at the reality of the situation and see what's the logical next step here. They've been doing this for almost 2 years now, trying to make this seem as if it's okay. It's not. It never was. And now we're getting to the point where they're going to like Israel wants to occupy the entire Gaza Strip. They want to remove every Palestinian at any cost.
Mm-hmm.
The logical conclusion at this point is just mass murder. That is what they have been doing.
Yeah, they've been doing it, and there have been whispers of an openness with using nuclear ordinance. With the thing about this particular offensive of this genocide, because I think the genocide's been going on since 1948.
Absolutely,
Genocide isn't always about death count.
Mm-hmm.
But part of this offensive is that the Israeli regime is realizing, and has realized for years, but it is really, really coming to terms with the fact that insurgent, like guerrilla warfare against a more dominant power, works every time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the entire premise, the entire ideological motivation behind guerrilla warfare is, as espoused by figures like Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh, Mao
Mm-hmm.
Zedong, etc., is that an under-equipped, a smaller and weaker army is able to beat a better, larger, and more technologically advanced, and better equipped army through tactics like this. Israel will have no choice but to continue just solely airstrikes. They want to clean out the Gaza Strip completely. They cannot
Mm-hmm.
do a ground invasion, because every time they do a ground invasion, we all get to see a video of a Hamas operative running and jumping onto a tank and killing 12 IDF soldiers with a homemade bomb. It's
And
not going to work.
yeah,
It,
and Israel, here's the thing. If people think that Israel is somehow liberating people from Hamas, that couldn't be farther from the truth. How many children have been orphaned by the Israeli occupying force? Thousands at this point. Thousands of children have been orphaned. How many of those kids have access to adequate social services to connect them with resources that they need in order to live a virtually good childhood? None, because all of those resources have been completely demolished. Who do they turn to for support? The only
Hamas.
group that is fighting for them, Hamas. And if it wasn't Hamas, it would be Hamas 2 or Hamas 3 or whatever next
Yeah,
fighting resistance group that came out of whatever the next resistance group that happened to pop up. It will just be the next one, whatever it's named, whatever beliefs they have. Ultimately, it's going to
it'll
be
be
the
the
same
PFLP.
story.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like the resistance factions in the Gaza Strip have done something that honestly a lot of leftist groups fail to do in the rest of the world, and that is build uh, dual power structures. And the one that has really been able to do that here, for example, if you were a little bit more familiar with, will be the Black Panther Party. But Hamas is not just a guerrilla fighting force. Hamas was a governmental, like a governing body
They were a political
in
party.
their political party. They had offices, they had all these other types of resources. The PFLP and the DFLP, those are both Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist Maoists, respectively, fighting forces in the Gaza Strip. They also have built dual power. The PFLP is out there in the streets every day, cooking with, you know, big like food like soup kitchen type equipment. They're cooking for people every day. Them and the Red Crescent partner on that kind of stuff all the time.
Hmm.
Um, uh, all of the other groups too have been able to build infrastructure, be it hideouts or being able to store things places. They have a connection with the people of the Gaza Strip. All of these groups do. And if Hamas gets dismantled, they're all just going to scatter and go to the next one. Now we can
Hmm.
cross our fingers and hope that it's going to be the PFLP and the DFLP, but wherever they go, the resistance is going to live. And every kid that watched their father get blown apart in front of them, watched their house get or experienced their house being bombed when their father came home because of the Where's Daddy missile AI system.
Hmm.
All of these kids are going to join the resistance.
Yeah.
You kill one father, you create 2.3 soldiers or 2 point, 5, 10
Hmm.
soldiers for every man killed. You create a bunch of child resistance soldiers. So the more that this goes on, the harder and harder it's going to get for Israel to actually pull this off because the fighting force is going to keep growing and growing and growing. Now we see that this, widespread famine in the Gaza Strip is their response to this because Israel
Hmm.
has recognized that if we keep like bombing people and killing just grown men, we're going to get a bunch of young child and teenage resistance fighters coming after this. And they do. There are teenagers who are fighting in Hamas. Many of them are 18. I mean, the average age of the Gaza Strip was like 30 leading up to this.
Hmm.
Very, very young part of the world because of how quickly people die and how quickly they're just picked off. But um, like there are very, very young people, 18, 19, 20, fighting against the IDF or the IOF at this point too. um, this widespread famine, this blocking of aid, these weird private-public partnerships like the Gaza Health Foundation that does aid distribution, which is just corralling people into
It's not.
livestock pens, shooting at them.
Hmm.
It's not. It's not. It's a performative action
Hmm.
made to look like the Israeli and U.S. regime are doing something. But what? Uh, pardon my French here, but what the fuck do you need an M16 to give somebody food for? Like, why are there armed like Blackwater mercenaries handing out food? Blackwater doesn't hand out food. Blackwater tortures people in Abu Ghraib.
Yeah. Like known mercenary groups. They're not even hiding it well, is the thing. They're not
No,
even
they're not.
hiding
They're
it
not at
well that
all.
they're doing this. And they don't have to because they know that currently there is no leftist like large leftist faction in the United States. The anti-communists made a very good did a very good job of eradicating any communists that could be against this from the state or from any institutions like academic institutions that could have a hand in stopping something like this or educating people on the facts of the matter. But when it comes to the famine and like the use of famine as a policy, this this is when we are getting into fascist territory, like real fascist territory. The fact is that like people are just like these are the conditions of which Jewish people were living in concentration camps. These are very very similar conditions. Sans bombing, this was this was the condition of no food, no access to any resources, medicine, anything like that. Um, and it's because the realization amongst all either pre-fascist or like very fascist ideological groups is well we can't like we have to figure out a way to get rid of all of them. Like what do we do? Like there is no like the basically what I'm trying to say here is that the logical conclusion to fascist policy always will be mass extermination of groups that like the outgroup of the group in which we are blaming all of our problems for. It's what happened to the Jews. It's why like the gas chambers were even implemented because they realized that well we have to take this to its logical conclusion. That's where we're at this point. That is how radicalized we've
Yeah.
gotten. That's
Yeah.
that's how you get to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean the end goal, the goal of fascism is to maintain the status quo in the hardest way possible,
Yeah.
right? Like, so it sounds really, really funny to say it like that, but
Yeah.
writers like Rajani Palmdut, uh, this guy, oh, you can't see that, but Rajani
There you go.
Palmdut is a British
Yeah.
communist. He said it very, very, like, very, 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 very distinctly that they're just trying to maintain a certain like epoch era of capitalist exploitation that is the most favorable and that they think is the most sustainable. The same goes for this weird imperialist outpost called Israel in the
Hmm.
Middle East. They're just trying to maintain or expand um, from this
Absolutely
certain
what they're
set
trying to
of
do.
relations and beachfront properties. There's the Marabi gas pocket in the Mediterranean that is within Gaza's sovereign waters and their
It
economic
is.
exclusion zone.
There
Um,
is there's an entire gas pocket under the Gaza Strip. Like there's
so it's not under it.
oh,
It's
it's
just out
okay.
in the water, but not very far. It's only a couple miles off the shore. And there
I
has been
see.
some prospecting there and some drilling for natural
From
gas that has
Egypt.
occurred over the years. That uh no, no,
No, no, not Egypt.
the
Okay, I thought it was Egypt.
there there was like prospecting for it that Hamas allowed some gas companies to do. I can't remember exactly which one, but they allowed people to come prospect for it to prove it was there and prove it was mineable, but it was never mined. So it's
Hmm.
just a big gas pocket sitting there. So yeah, beachfront real estate and oil. It's the same. It's the same teletape over and over again. Real estate and oil.
Real estate and oil, like that's the thing is what like ultimately from a Marxist perspective, when we look at this materialist out like when we're seeing this from a materialist perspective, from dialectical materialism, and we're understanding all of the different um like sources of information here and in the events which are happening, we can see that ultimately this imperialist project is no different from every other imperialist project that has been carried out. It is about having access to natural resources and control over the land. And historically, indigenous people under capitalism have not been given that right. We can see this in America, how indigenous people were exterminated by our own American presidents. Like,
And
I
still
don't
are.
know, and still are. I don't know why Donald Trump said that his favorite American president is Andrew Jackson. There's so many others you could have picked. I don't know why you said that one. Like, could have picked Lincoln. Could have even picked,
Yeah,
picked Roosevelt.
I think that should be a requirement. Like you got it. Like if we're gonna do this bourgeois democracy here, like the presidents have to be saying that either Lincoln or like FDR. As much as I don't like the New Deal, but I like the FDR have to be your two favorite presidents, and that's it. But then FDR turned all the Japanese nationals
Yeah,
in the U.S. So like anyways, back to the
it's
point.
it's just it's the choosing of the other like the other guy that also did genocide. I'm like, come on, like you couldn't have picked you. You can't make
Yeah,
this up. Like this is so
it doesn't
ridiculous.
because I mean two uh two sides two sides of this spectrum here, right? Like Marxist Leninists, we make our arguments about the course of history without a moral lens. We do so. I remember the quote that all hitherto society is a history of class struggle. We look at the world
Period.
through this materialist lens, where we see that the economic and means of production, these forces are driving society forward, um, and stuff. And on the other end, the other very, very far right end of the spectrum, you have these crazy, crazy, ultra rich bourgeoisie. They don't see the world in a moral framework either. They just see dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Exterminating the indigenous people of what now constitutes America was profitable because it opened up a bunch of land for white farmers, white settler farmers,
Mm-hmm.
industry, and the further and further contemporary encroachment on treaties with the indigenous people of America, um, like are still going on, and land is still being grabbed from them, and the communities are still being subjected. They're nationally oppressed within our own borders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, the Palestinians will never be able, in this current state of things, will never be able to have, economic rights over the resources of that land. Even the farmlands, like Palestinians in the West Bank can't go farm za'atar anymore. They're one of
Yeah,
the most famous herbs that come out of the region, or the oranges that used to be grown in Palestine that were the favorite orange around the world until Israel took over, or
yeah.
all of the other things too. Like they just, anyways, just
No,
adding
like,
context.
but that's really important because when you mention the farmland, I actually have a statistic pulled up here from OCHA. I believe they're even they're either a UN offshoot, but they talk about how the latest satellite imagery shows that 86% of cropland in the Gaza Strip has been damaged, while most of the remaining cropland is completely inaccessible, leaving only 1.5% of Gaza's cropland currently accessible and not damaged. Meaning that even if we stopped the genocide today, complete ceasefire, aid was let in, it would take decades to be able to build up the strip back to an inhabitable place. That is how bad things have gotten over there. Like the complete decimation of not only the farmland but also the cities, homes, places of work, just entire lives demolished and crushed and ruined. Um, and it's not like, oh, well, we can bounce back from this. It's not like there was that much destruction. No, everything, everything has
Everything,
been
everything's
everything.
gone.
Everything's
Everything's
gone.
gone.
When you look at the most recent photos that are coming out of the Gaza Strip on like aerials, like when you can actually see what it looks like from a bird's eye view, you can see that everything has been completely destroyed. And that was by design. That was completely
Mhm.
by design because they want to pave over the Gaza Strip for new settlers to move in and act as though people weren't ethnically cleansed from this land. That is like that has always been the goal. Like if they wanted to just quote unquote get rid of Hamas, why did they destroy all that farmland? Why?
Starve people to kill them. And the thing about the
Yeah.
farmland too is there's, a bit of farmland within the Gaza Strip, but there was still up to October 6th, 2023, there were still 500 trucks of aid going into the Gaza Strip every day.
Mm-hmm.
And now a couple trickle in when there's no farmland going on, no one's, there's no markets, nothing like that. None of that is happening in the Gaza Strip anymore. And then
Yeah.
less and less trucks are let in. Yeah, it's a deliberate starvation. Because Israel is the one who controls the border checkpoints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like do the math. When you look at the reality of the situation, you see the fact that they have decimated any possible ability to open a market or to allow in resources for people to build up an area to live. They're bombing. They're deliberately bombing encampments and places where Palestinians have set up tents to live. Like we can see, this has been a very systematic and methodical like genocide, and it is because they want to expel the Palestinians. It was never about we just need to get rid of Hamas. I have a personal anecdote about this. When this started, I had a political science professor when I was a soph no, I was a sophomore in college, back in community college. And I had a professor who was very Zionist, and when the genocide started, he said in class, he was like, we wanted nothing to do with he lived in Israel for years and he's Jewish. But like that's just like background on him when he says we. He said, we never wanted anything to do with the Gaza Strip. They keep bothering us. They keep coming after us. This isn't this and I'm like, okay, first of all, we're in a political science class. I don't want to hear your opinions. Like I'm not trying to listen to your opinions on this. Second, um, that's just not true. That is, and I genuinely think he believed it because it is propaganda, like through and through. Like we have been propagandized to think that.
Yeah, I mean, the Gaza Strip's been under siege since 67, 48, really. Um,
Hmm.
Israel controls their water, their electricity, internet. Um, so no, the Palestinians were never left alone
Yeah,
once.
it's
It's the partition.
Yeah, I feel like there was this like broad sense of like, oh, well, it's not like the Israelis wanted nothing to do with them. And then the Palestinians, they just started coming after the Israelis and there was nothing that could be done other. It's like, no, that is the furthest thing from the truth because it is deliberately leaving out in very important historical context about the realities, which is that Israel controls, as you said, all of the resources which go into the Gaza Strip, not just some of them, all of them. They can
Yeah.
shut that off whenever they like, and they are doing it right now. And so when
Mhm.
my professor told me this, I was like, okay, I should disregard everything he tells me from now on.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I did. But more importantly, I think that it really speaks to this level of propaganda that and this like very like nationalist sentiment that exists even in American academia, where it's like I just interviewed Grover Furr for my last episode
Really?
on Stalin. I did, yes. And
Oh, that's
um
awesome. Okay.
yeah, and he talked about how when he was doing his research on Stalin and he was connecting with Soviet academics, because he's not a he's a he's employed at a university for medieval English literature. But he does research about Soviet history, and specifically, he was told by almost all of these people, all of these academics who study Soviet history, well, all of this is true, but you have to denounce Stalin. You have to denounce it all. Like, and that's what I feel like every time we talk about what's going on in Israel and Palestine and everything, you have to denounce Hamas. Well, what are you gonna denounce Hamas? Are you gonna like if there's always this like precursor of, well, you have to make me feel comfortable in this conversation first. Like um as
As
if
if
you
comfort
can't.
exists in the rest of the world.
Yeah,
Honestly. Like,
honestly. And it's like being a Marxist, it's like we always have to say, oh, well, I don't believe in this. It's like, no, I do support Stalin because everything that liberals believe about him is a lie. Like
mhm.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like this is truth when it's not.
Yeah.
Because as we can see, liberals are perfectly fine with accepting half truths and lies whenever it feeds their narrative. Like
Mhm.
they're perfectly fine
Yeah.
with it.
And the same goes for Palestine and Hamas. I mean, like the International Conference of Marxist-Leninist Parties and Organizations, our line internationally is we support the resistance,
Mm-hmm.
whatever form that takes. We support the
Yeah.
resistance. Um, denouncing Hamas is denouncing an armed denouncing armed resistance generally is is uh ahistorical. Armed resistance has been typically what wins, say for a couple examples. But even for non-communist history, let's look at let's look at other things that were taken by armed resistance. So the French Revolution, most of the
Mm-hmm.
other bourgeois revolutions were taken by armed resistance, right? So denouncing an armed group like
Period.
that, or allowing even the space for people to call Hamas a right-wing, like fundamentalist Islamist group is bullshit. They're not. They're liberals. They're religious liberals. They're
Yeah.
the Islamic version of like liberation theology,
Like
or every other liberal bourgeois group that has ever tried to separate like and overthrow some totalitarian. I will use the term totalitarian here.
mm-hmm.
Totalitarian, king or otherwise dictatorship. Um, uh, has been a religious liberal group, and that's what Hamas is. They're not a right wing group. They're made up of people who are predominantly Sunni Muslims because that part of the world is predominantly Sunni Muslims. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and denouncing them is dumb because if you denounce Hamas and in this narrative, then okay, so what about the Philippines next? If
Yeah.
the National Democratic Revolution succeeds in the Philippines, as is the line of the communists, are you going to see, oh, but I denounce the NPA? No, the NPA is the one that's been fighting for years now.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you denounce the fighters in Kashmir who have been engaging in armed resistance, typically CPI Maoists, but there's other groups that have been engaged in armed resistance in this region too. Are you going to denounce them? No, because as soon as you denounce them and you denounce the legitimacy of armed like resistance to occupation, um, it
Absolutely.
takes away the precedent for it to exist in the first place. And we cannot let history unfold. History will not unfold any further if armed resistance goes away. Because until all people
Yeah.
are free, it will absolutely.
And that's kind of, I think that's a really good point to kind of counter people who always want to say, oh well, you need to denounce Hamas, you need to like, it's like, I don't know, I'm not, okay, here's the thing, I'm not going to do that unless you denounce Israel. Then denounce Israel. If it, like, come on, like,
Oh,
if
I
it's,
wouldn't even ever denounce Hamas. I love Hamas. I
yeah.
love classic liberalism. Hamas are classic liberals. That's what they are. I have a copy over there in my bookshelf of the Hamas Charter that I read all the time,
Mhm.
and they're just classic liberals.
They're
I
just,
think it's
yeah, they,
awesome.
yeah, good for them. I'm not going to denounce Hamas because Hamas is currently the only group right now that is like even doing anything remotely good to help Palestinian resistance. Because, like, not
There's
the
the
only
others,
group,
but yeah,
sorry. There's others. There are others. I should not say that. There are most certainly other groups. But the fact of the matter is that, like, I'm fully on the side of Palestinian people. I'm on the side of all oppressed people, of the working class, of working people. And I'm not going to sit here and quibble about, oh well, you need to denounce this group before you're allowed to support them, from liberals who quite frankly have no moral compass when it comes to, I don't know, are you going to denounce the United States for all of the atrocities that the United States has carried out over how many centuries now? 2 centuries going into three? Like,
two,
are we
two,
gonna
two and a half,
two
two
and
and
a
a half
half?
centuries exactly. Yeah.
Like, are like, if we're really gonna do that, then we're not having a conversation. Because, like, I have no patience at this point for people who, when we talk about the genocide and when we talk about Palestinian liberation, they want. I think that there's a book about this that I've been meaning to read. I have downloaded on my phone. It's about, like, the need to have, like, a perfect victim. Like, oh well, you can't, like, they need to check off all of these boxes for me to be willing to support them. It's like, that's very much, I believe, a liberal minded idea of, like, you have
Oh yeah,
to
absolutely.
you have to look a certain way for me to feel as though you deserve my support, rather than looking at, like, the entire context of the situation and saying, like, oh yeah, like, do I support every ideological thing that Hamas puts out there? No. But am I going to support their resistance against a settler occupying genocidal settler colony? Like, come on, be so serious. Like, that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Be for real. I'm not going to denounce the people that have still are and will continue to fight for their freedoms. There's no reason to denounce it. It's also like kind of a phenomenon where liberals want to have, like the conditions. It's like they're like sports rules. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, blah 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 blah. Like you have to agree to these terms before we have the conversations. Like no, and I don't really care if it makes you uncomfortable. If guns make you uncomfortable, some poor, starving Palestinian picking up an AK-47 doesn't make me uncomfortable. What makes me uncomfortable is my tax dollars that go to the, like, what, $8 trillion military industrial complex, our yearly military budget, that a bunch of it gets sent over there for them to drop on that innocent, starving Palestinian teenager with an AK. That's what I have a problem with.
Yeah,
I have a problem going
that's
to work every day, recognizing that my money is going towards that. My tax dollars is going towards that.
that's
I
the
have more in
larger
common with
problem.
that. I have more in common with that fighter who's trying to figure out where his next meal is, or maybe doesn't have power at his house, or his power is going to get shut off, or the water won't run clean, or his car is breaking
Hmm.
down all the time. If he even has a car, doesn't know part of his family, half his family is dead. I have so much more in common with that teenager with the AK-47 than I do with the ones dropping the bombs, or the ones like just sending bombs over to that occupation for free. I have so much more in common with that kid than those
Hmm.
bombs. China is uh, Israel is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Um, China has built infrastructure, roads, these types of things in Israel.
Hmm.
So not only can we recognize Chinese imperialism um,
Hmm.
in Africa, in Zimbabwe, especially the lithium mines in Zimbabwe, um, but we can also look at China's actions and say, not only are you imperialist, but you are using your ability to project capital around the world to benefit a genocidal settler colony, being
Absolutely.
Israel, building roads for them, selling them, even just selling them, doing the trade of selling the Israeli government drones and technology for weapons, that kind of stuff. If we're going to condemn Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Boeing, um, all of these American corporations for doing this, and then there are Chinese corporations doing the same, I thought capital in China was subjected to the Communist Party of China. I thought capital was controlled in the Chinese economy.
Period.
I thought there had to be party members in every state-owned enterprise. Oh, but these aren't state-owned enterprises. These are private
Hmm.
enterprises that are held by party members. It's quite suspicious.
Hello?
And yeah, it's very very suspicious. And if anybody wants me to back up any of what I just said, I fully welcome you to come try to have a discussion with me about it.
Yeah.
But so not only is China imperialist for what they do to the global South, but them aiding and benefiting materially through infrastructure projects and technology sales to Israel are also complicit in this. So um, denying that China has no role in this as well would be anti-materialist. It's an idealist thing. You people have this idealist notion about China that it is this perfect socialist utopia. No, no, it is not. It is this social democratic utopia built off the back of imperialism, especially
Hmm.
after the form and opening up of Deng Xiaoping and whatever the hell Xi Jinping's doing. But it's an imperialist power, not as strong, but similar in function to the US, and is also contributing to this genocide, just like the US.
Absolutely. And so, as we like wrap up here today, and we, I think what is like the big message, I guess, in like one like sentence, I guess. I don't know. What would you want people most to take away from what we talked about today and the genocide and like why what's going on is like reprehensible?
Yeah. Um, I mean, for starters, this is going to be a little bit more than a sentence, but for starters, um, if people on the left, Marxists, um, look at this and look at all these problems and don't realize that ultimately the goal of Marxism is to help and liberate all people from the yoke of capital and all people from the yoke of exploitation.
Hmm.
If you can't look at things and recognize them as atrocities, you might have lost the plot. And there are some leftists out there that have absolutely lost that plot and just get into the dialectics, the Slavoj Žižek
Mm.
types and the ultra left com types, whatever that sort of stuff. You've lost the plot.
Yeah.
Secondly, uh, support the resistance. Support resistance generally. There are a couple instances where, like, this resistance faction is a little weird in a separate conflict. Won't name any particulars there. I was like, there's some weird stuff going on there. Maybe I won't support them. Um,
Right.
but resistance to occupation, resistance to oppression, exploitation, murder, genocide is always justifiable. So support that
Hmm.
resistance. Um, Third, I would say we as citizens of the nation that is facilitating this the most need to make concisive and direct actions against the systems that are fueling this. So not only is it direct action towards weapons companies, military industrial complex, that sort of stuff, but also um, other multinational corporations that are profiting off of this, right? Amazon, Google, Hewlett Packard, Siemens, um, uh, uh, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, McDonald's, the BDS list needs to be adhered to by everybody. The more and
Hmm.
more people adhere strictly to this BDS list, the more and more we can start to shut down corporations that are directly benefiting the Israeli occupation. And the more that we can directly financially undermine the Israeli occupation, the quicker it will dissolve. If we recognize that all society, all hitherto society is a history of class struggle, and that economic forces are what are driving things forward, it is an economic force in primacy that is driving this genocide, and we need to use economic force to undermine the Israeli occupation. Fourth, join an organization. Go out and do something. We all, not everybody can be the YouTube or the poster or the that sort of thing. Like, we need revolutionaries out there. Go join a organization. My preference
Be
would
in
be for people to
community.
join the American. Yeah, be in community. My preference would be for people to join the American Party of Labor, and you should most definitely do that. But go join any community organization, be it a diaspora organization, some type of, go work at the food bank, that sort of stuff. Lastly, investigate. Investigation is important. With all of these very, very complicated things, the occupation of Palestine by the Israeli regime, the conflict going on in the Congo, in Sudan, what's going on in India, all of these need people to investigate them thoroughly. If you just accept one, like the predominant narrative on something, but you also recognize that economic forces are driving history and society, there's probably economic forces behind that narrative, and you should look into it a little bit further. With Palestine, a lot of this information is very, very, very available, especially with the overwhelming international support, grassroots support for Palestinians. So like the GDF YouTube channel and other things. Watch the Al Jazeera documentaries, but investigate all of these conflicts for yourself so that you can come to the right conclusion. If you don't investigate, you will not come to the right conclusion.
Absolutely. I think that's really important points for people to understand. And if you need to, rewind and listen to that again, do it. Do it as many times as you possibly need to, because what Comrade Ivanna was just talking about is how we build solidarity and resistance against capitalist forces, which are they have no care in the world about you or I or really anyone else. You have more in common, as Comrade Ivanna said, with your average Palestinian freedom fighter than you do with any billionaire. So, it's so important to recognize the fact that resistance is resistance is resistance. We need to resist. Like there is no future in which we live peacefully and we don't resist. And so it's time. I think a lot of people have gotten very comfortable doing social media activism, myself included. I have been there, still am there to an extent. But it's time to stop being inside. We need to get out there. It's time to
Go
go and
outside,
organize.
yeah.
Go
Go outside,
outside,
yeah.
touch some
Yeah.
grass.
Mhm.
Like
Get some fresh
and
air, talk to some
yeah,
people. It's good. It's good for you and it's good for the world. Go outside.
yeah. And I know how hard it can be, but I promise, comrades, that the more that we organize and come together as community, the easier it gets. And that's not to say that it's always going to be a cakewalk, because most certainly it won't. But as we can see with Palestinian resistance, resistance never dies. You could kill every last Palestinian person in the Gaza Strip, and it wouldn't change the fact that we would still be fighting for resistance, and in fact harder, because no one should ever be subject to ethnic cleansing. That is, genocide is the crime of crimes, and there's no waffling your way out of that, no quibbling your way out of that with a democratic socialist or some lib that's like, oh well, it's justified. No, it's not. No, it's not.
No, it cannot be justified ever.
Well, thank you so much, Comrade Ivanna, for coming on today.
Yeah,
I am
thank you for
so
having me.
excited. Yes. And where can we find you?
Um, where can you find me? Streets of Seattle. Um, I don't really have any like official social media accounts that I connect with my activism, but you can follow at apl.pnw on Instagram. That is the Pacific Northwest Division for the American Party of Labor. And yeah, come out to any action that we are putting on or endorsing in the Seattle area, and most likely I will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can also find me at redphoenixnews.com. That is the news
Yeah.
outlet of the American Party of Labor. I have a few articles out there. There's some more soon, but you know, writing is a task.
It's hard.
Um, yeah, and then that I'm around. I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere on the internet. Someone will find me.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead.